Good afternoon. So today's video is a little different. I had a comment on one of the videos I posted regarding my top rated Stephen King, and someone said, hey, I'm new to Stephen King, kind of. I've only read, a few or one book, and, I appreciate the video because it gives me some ideas. And I thought, that's definitely a video idea in and of itself. And there's obviously, when doing some research, there's tons of videos out there with people on YouTube in the BookTube community talking about where you should kind of start or where they recommend people start when it comes to Stephen King. Some of them could delve into kind of like I am and kind of, what's your taste? Here's kind of some ideas and going from there. Stephen King obviously has written a ton of books, so it can be a little overwhelming if you're a first timer or new to Stephen King. It's definitely worth the dip because, again, he's my favorite author. But like all things, you have to take it with a grain of salt because everyone's opinion definitely is different. He has written 65 novels, I believe, as of today. There's 7 Bachman books. There's over 200 short stories. So, yeah, it's a daunting task to figure out, where do I start? And he covers a plethora of genres in the sense that, some of this might be for you, some of it might not. So I'm going to give you my recommendations and let you take it from there. I have 3 choices that I consider kind of literature. And then I have 3 choices where I consider kind of the shorter stuff that I think are just great and that you would definitely, probably most people would hit it off. Some of them, are more stories and more literature bound, and some of them are definitely, they maybe dip their toes into a little bit of horror, a little bit of supernatural, but not so heavy-handed that it would turn people off. So here's my recommendations, and I'm going to, again, keep these kind of in a group. For literature, I think The Green Mile is definitely an underrated Stephen King book. It's definitely a great, great story. Covers a really ghastly topic, multiple topics actually, and he does it very, very well. It dwells into a little bit of supernatural, but it's a great story. Misery, also a fantastic story. There's a little bit of kind of a horror element to it, but really it's probably Stephen King's closest perfect book, and it's definitely worth it. And it's not a huge endeavor, and I think it's something that most people would like. And then last in that kind of literature list, I have Revival. This one again has a little bit of supernatural towards the end, but it's really a coming of age story, and King always does coming of age slice of life very, very well, especially in the time periods around the 70s, 60s, 80s. He does that super, super well. When it comes to short stuff, I think Different Seasons, you have a collection of 4 novellas, 3 of these of which have been made into movies. You have the Shawshank Redemption, you have The Body or Stand By Me, and then the other one is, gosh, I'm drawing a blank, Apt Pupil. And that one is a good one, along with The Breathing Method. They're all 4 great stories. I mean, Shawshank, Stand By Me, top tier movies too. So you can't go wrong there. Short story collection, one of his first, Night Shift, unbelievable good stories. Some of them, take up 10 pages. Some of them take up 40. They're great. I mean, it gets a little bit kind of crazy in some of them, but you really see him as a writer, like his imagination is just top tier. And then another short story collection, probably the second best in my opinion, is Skeleton Crew. I think Skeleton Crew, when it comes to short stories, is probably just below Night Shift, but there's a ton of good stories in there. I'm not going to bring out all the books here, but when it comes to the next kind of category, what about as big stuff? If you're into big books where you have a plethora of characters, you have different story arcs, different kind of POVs, then these are probably books for you. Duma Key, I think that's a fantastic book. It has one of his best endings in my opinion. It's fantastic. 11/22/63, you have, a time travel, portal type world. It's great. You have a love story. It's fantastic. Needful Things. You have this vindictive guy, the store owner gets involved in their lives and not always in a positive way. Tons of characters. It's a Castle Rock story. It's fun. Under the Dome, a huge story, you know, tons of characters. It's kind of crazy. You got aliens at the end. I mean, it's typical Stephen King. When it comes to the next kind of category, we have hardcore. When I think of hardcore and I think of Stephen King, you know, obviously there's some standouts, and, you know, Dark Tower. I mean, that is his magnum opus. That is kind of the nucleus of all of the King multiverse. If you're willing to take the dive and read those 8 books, The Dark Tower is for the hardcore constant reader. The other two kind of that, in my opinion, are under hardcore is definitely It. I mean, it's a great coming of age story, but at the same time, you're dealing with, you know, one of the key nemesis is it in the multiverse, and Pennywise, and it covers some pretty graphic stuff, you know, for the time periods and out of the time periods still today. And if you've read the book, you'll know what I'm referencing, you know, especially with the core group of kids and what they do. Insomnia, another big book. You know, it took me several times to read Insomnia. I think I finally finished it on like the 4th or 5th go, and I'm glad I did. The first 3 or 4 times I said it's named Insomnia because it's giving me insomnia, but the 4th, or I don't know what, sometimes you get in a different place. For me, I think that really had a lot to do with it, because every time I definitely connected with Ralph Roberts, and I definitely connected with the part where he's trying to help the battered woman. And so, and I knew everyone said like there's huge Crimson King and Dark Tower references in this. This is like one of the most heavily influenced Dark Tower stories outside of the initial 8 books. But it took me 5 times to get it, and when I did, it definitely was one. It became an instant one of my faves. So, when it comes to fantasy, you know, you've got Fairy Tale, one of his most recent entries. You have The Talisman, which is definitely one of my favorite books and one of the books I'd like to reread soon. You know, Traveling Jack, and then you have The Stand. I mean, that is his biggest book, but definitely is kind of in the fantasy genre because you're dealing with, you know, Randall Flagg. When it comes to horror, I mean, you have the classics, Pet Sematary, Carrie, The Shining. I mean, those are all classics. And the funny thing is when I go through this kind of list with you all, I mean, outside a couple, I mean, they're all movies, and that's the draw of Stephen King and his imagination. There's a plethora, obviously, and I'm using that word a lot today, but there's a number of other books you could go with and probably be good choices as well. To me, these kind of fit. If you want literature, if you want short stuff, if you're wanting longer stuff, if you're wanting to be hardcore, if you're wanting to dive into fantasy, if you're wanting to dive into horror. And interchangeably, some of these stories dip toes in some of all of those kind of genres and subgenres, but it's just a matter of what your preference is. So that's my interpretation. You know, again, Stephen King is my favorite author. He's, you know, one of the ones that I try to collect all of his works, and one that I'm hopefully in the coming weeks going to be able to proudly say that I've read every single book. I have 2 left. And so I feel pretty comfortable giving you this kind of, you know, feedback and guidance and direction. But at the same time, again, like I said, it is up to you and your own taste to, you know, give it a shot. I mean, not everyone's going to connect with the stories. Like I said, when it came to Insomnia, sometimes it takes multiple attempts. I've tried Lisey's story, and it's still a book I have yet to finish. It's one of the 2. I've tried it multiple times. I've never been able to get, you know, probably past page 150. So I'm hoping I'm in the right headspace this time. And so that's just when it comes. You have, again, Stephen King provides you more good books than he does bad books. Even within the books themselves, you get some stories where he doesn't stick the landing, some stories where it starts off slow and gets momentum, some stories where the middle is just a complete and unbearable slog. But at the same time, when you think back after finishing these books, I mean, they're really, really good. So I hope this helps you. It's definitely one of my longer videos and kind of a untraditional kind of video from book reviews and book hauls and wrap-ups and that kind of thing, but I definitely want to create content that you enjoy. So if you're still with me and watching this, definitely give me a like, subscribe, give me a comment. If you'd like to see other things, I definitely want to take your feedback. You know, I've recently gotten a few comments that weren't all positive. There was disagreement, and that's fine too. I'm definitely here to take it all in stride. I mean, just because you don't agree with me doesn't mean, you know, you're wrong, or doesn't mean that I'm wrong either. It's all a matter of opinion when it comes down to it. So, anyways, that's my video for today. I hope you enjoy this. I hope it gives you some insight if you're new to Stephen King. And happy Thursday. Thanks.